Hello, everyone. This is JD Calderon, and this is Indy Comics Explained. And yet again, I have another fantastic guest. Not only is he a comic creator, but he is also an interviewer, and that's his primary thing. But he also does comics, so we got a lot of things to talk about. But before we get to him, I currently have an Indiegogo going on because it's always something going. And these are the books I'm offering up on Indiegogo. Fallen Gods is a 4-issue limited series featuring Oswald fighting against mad gods, mad sorcerers, and interdimensional beings. So, without further ado, let me bring in my guest. Hold on. Doop. Mark Torres from It Came From the Radio.
Woo!
So how you doing, Mark?
I am doing well. So this is also on what is it, YouTube? So there's like a chat.
Yes.
How does that work? I can't see the chat here. So do I have to go to YouTube to see the chat?
No, you should. There should be you should be able to see the comments section.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is my extent of technology. I'm grateful I can turn the computer on.
Well, I can tell because we only have an icon. So I mean that's the thing, but that's okay. I can icon you for icon. There you go.
Oh, there we go.
There you go. See,
yours is better.
Well, it's as a picture, so
it's more beautiful. Beautiful.
Jade Gonzalez, David Montoya on the colors. So yes, they do great work. But anyway. So let's get on. Let's get into it, Mark. So, Mark, tell me about It Came From the Radio. I mean, how long have you been doing this podcast? Because I know it's a radio cast. So, tell me about that.
All right. So, do you want the long story or the short story?
How about the one in the middle?
All right. So, we had a show in 2003, I believe. It was called The Comic Book Novice. It was on WGBB, which is 12:40 a.m. in Long Island, Long Island's oldest radio station. And in some form or another, it's basically the same thing what we do now. So throughout the years, we had to stop. We kept on going. We've gone off and on. And are you a wrestling fan by chance?
I was at one point.
Okay.
I probably stopped watching 10, 15 years ago.
So that's actually good. So do you know the wrestler Taz?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So his brother worked with me at the movie theater I used to work as a projectionist, and I was talking to him about the radio show, and he's like, we should bring it back. I want to be part of the show, but if we're gonna do it, we should change the name and make it more broad, because the thing was, it was called The Comic Book Novice, but we talked about the exact same things we did then as we do now, but people felt that it was the name limited itself, so like we needed a new name. So Taz's brother, he myself, my other co-host Hassan Godwin, which was from the original show, I was a manager at the time, so we had a special screening of a movie, and all the employees there, we came up with names for the show, and we gave it to them, and they picked which was the best name. So that's how it came from the radio. But it's basically the same show. We talk about movies, comics, entertainment, focusing more on the independents, because everybody else talks about the major guys and nobody talks about the independent guys. And if you actually if you go to any comic book convention, there are more independent guys than there are major guys. So I felt that they need the coverage. And I mean, I will take a big name every once in a while. Like we've had William Shatner on the show. We've had Mark Hamill on the show. So, I'm not an idiot. If somebody says, hey, would you like to interview this? I'm like, sure, why not? But I try to focus on the independent guys, and there's so much stuff like you. That's how I met you. Like, holy crap, it's a great stuff, great story, great things, and that's what we do on our show. So it is a actual radio show. It's on WARY in Westchester County. It's on so that's a terrestrial radio station. They play us multiple times, Monday through Friday. We are on an online radio station called Beyond the Dawn Radio. They play us every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then we're on probably now like 30 different podcast media outlets. We just got some more just the other day. So that's our show.
Gotcha. Now, obviously you were there for I don't know if you were there for the shift, right? Like, have you seen a huge difference between when you were just terrestrial radio as opposed to a lot of podcasts going on, like this sort of thing, a lot of streaming stuff?
100%, especially because of, the apocalypse is happening right now. So before everybody had a comic and they had a project, now everybody has their own little podcast. So it's amazing, and the technology has gotten so much easier, cheaper, and better between back then in 2003 to now. It's only been 17 years, but that's a huge bound and leap in technology. For myself, as I mentioned before, I'm not technology friendly at all. And yet in the pandemic, I'm able to put together some type of remnants of a show, because we are not allowed in the studio to record because of the pandemic. So we kind of hodgepodge it together. So yeah, it's hugely different from back then. I mean, hell, back then there was no Avengers, there was no Marvel Cinematic Universe. Power Rangers was a joke back then. It wasn't a multi-billion-dollar industry back then. And as times change, you kind of see it grow and evolve, and it's amazing if you take a step back and listen to how things were back then. You would think it's the 30s. It's so mind-boggling.
So I mean, what's the thing you find the most? Okay, also now, how do you find that affecting your numbers? Like, you're going through all these different sources, streaming and everything. Like, where are you getting your biggest numbers by what you see?
From once again, because my technology knowledge is the worst. I have no idea how to read these numbers sometimes, but I would say that our biggest number would be the radio station itself, because it's an actual radio station, has a range. The station manager tells me the numbers, so I'm like, oh, okay, this is the range, this is how many people we reach. I do my math. Okay, so we probably have like 10% of that audience, and that's how I get my numbers of where we're listened to the most.
Right. Gotcha. Okay, cool. So now, like now, how many times, like, your show is it weekly?
Yeah, we make one new show each week. Yes.
Gotcha. So just at a rough guess, how many people have you interviewed?
Oof. It's I will give, we're in the triple digits somewhere. I mean, it's been, like I said, on and off for 17 years, but we have more than just an interview show. So we kind of have like the same format, but there's different types of shows that we do. So we either have a topic of the week, a movie discussion, or an interview. So we didn't interview a new person every single week. Sometimes we talked about a movie we saw. Sometimes we had just a subject that was important to discuss at the time. Like I was telling a friend of mine that we had a show about J.J. Abrams a couple of years back, and how it pisses me off him of his filmmaking abilities. This was before he did. I think it was before he did the Star Wars. Obviously, I think it was just when he was doing the Star Treks. That I had a conversation about that. A conversation that we haven't had yet, but I have been sitting on this one for such a long time, is I want to talk about the difference between the art and the artist. Because that is something, especially in this toxic culture that's going on right now, and the cancel culture, that like if somebody does something like, oh, all of a sudden I can't like what he did.
Right.
So that's a topic that we would like to discuss. Or we watch a movie. So we watch I don't know, what do we talk about? Oh, this train wreck of a movie called Kickboxing Academy. So we watched that. It's yeah, you have no idea, because it was starring Christopher Kamen Lee, who is a Power Ranger. I'm a huge Power Ranger fan, and his sister, who plays the sister on Supergirl, Chyla Lee. And in the movie, they were cast as boyfriend and girlfriend. Yeah, so you watch it. It's just the worst movie. We have like a discussion about that. So that's what we do. So those are different types. So it's not an interview each and every week. And as we've been doing recently, and I believe I just kind of figured it out. We were doing self-promotion spotlights. So it's like, hey, give me an audio file, self-promotion spotlight. We'll put it up on the show, and that kind of just helps give us content and able to do that without being able to interview people, because I haven't been able to interview. And I think I figured it out how to do it audio wise online this week. So from now on, we might be doing more interviews.
Gotcha. Yeah, what's funny is I actually have a guy that I have a line on that I want to interview. Older gentleman, right? He's online, but he has a problem with his video camera. So he's constantly sending me his phone number. So I have to actually so I have to interview him over the phone. So I just recently figured that situation out. So I gotta contact him and see if I can interview him, because I'm really looking forward to him.
This is old school tip. This is what I found out recently. When I was doing the news with one of my co-hosts, I couldn't figure out how to do it online. So what I did was I took this handy dandy digital recorder, which is an amazing thing. It's an Olympus VN514 PC. It has great sound. And I put it up to my cell phone, and we have a conversation. I record that, and it sounded pretty decent. Like, people who listened to it didn't know that it was on the phone that I did it. So I'm, with my recorder against my mouth and the cell phone's on speaker. Sounded great.
Okay, I mean that's fair. That's a good workaround. But I think I'm gonna.
I'm just saying, old school.
But I'm gonna put my faith in Skype. But okay. But yeah, that's fine. But yeah, like I said, I'd rather just do it because with him, I plan to export the WAV file and then import it into film editing, and then we're gonna go in and like put in like a montage.
See, right there, fancy smancy. That's way out of my league, right there.
I went to film school a few years ago, so it's like one of these things. It's just like okay, let's get into the film editing, or into the was it Final Cut Pro? That's what we use. So we get in there.
So you went to film school to be a filmmaker, or was it just to help with you're doing now?
No, I went to school to actually become a filmmaker. The only thing is I discovered while going to film school that I was just like, no. Which was good, because I took it was like a 3 or 4 month course, right? and I did it here as the New York Film Academy down here on 14th Street in New York City, Manhattan. And I just went. I was going for directing. I directed 3 short films in that period. Edited them, shot them, did the whole 9 yards. It was a lot of fun. But it is a different level monetarily. I mean, I've spent a lot of money creating comics. Man, you could blow gigawatts of money making a movie. So yeah, I was like, no, because I wanted to go indie that route too, but I was just like, it just no way.
Can we see those films? Did you put them online? Put them online. I want people to see them.
I should. Who's in it? You remember David Kules?
Yeah.
He's in it. Yeah.
Oh, now I have to see this movie.
Yeah. One day I gotta dig up I have them all over the place. But yeah, I can. Well, one of them is an interview with my friend Steve. I think he has that up on his website. And then there was 2 shorts. One of them was really short, probably about 60 seconds. And then the other one was a little bit long as well, probably about 8 or 9 minutes.
Wow.
But yeah, it was fun, man. I had a lot of fun doing it. But let's talk about you, Mr. Mark, flipping it on me. Interview so many people just comes to you naturally.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, because you're also a comic book creator, and that's not something that I know too much about you, because we always see each other, you walking around and you're always interviewing people.
Yep.
But I don't think I've never seen any of your comics.
So, that just goes to show how good of a job I'm doing at promoting.
Listen, I do a terrible job too, so it's just like, yeah. But
all right. So this is part of the inception of the radio show.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to a comic book school in 93. It was the New York Academy of Comic Book Art and Fantasy Illustration. It was run by this guy, Carl Paolino. Mm-hmm. Right now, he's most famous for doing. He worked on what is that? The thing with the animation on MTV when they had the characters fighting, Celebrity Deathmatch.
Okay.
It was
Liquid Radio.
It was
Liquid TV.
It was after Liquid TV, but around that same time. But yeah, it was like celebrities where they had like Michael Knight versus the Dukes of Hazzard or types of in claymation.
Yeah.
That.
Those are funny.
So he had a hand in that. He had his own little special effects studio, and this is gonna be something you may remember, or people in the audience might remember. There was a football promotion at the time where they had like big time football legends going into a monster chamber for like a Halloween promotion. They turned into monsters. It was a Coca-Cola thing, and they did the special effects for that. So that was their big claim to fame at the time. And he decided he wanted to make a comic book school. So he got Russ Braun, who draws The Boys right now. He got Stu Suchint, who was a colorist who worked for Valiant at the time. And he got Prentice Rollins, who was an inker for Milestone. He's an author now, a really great guy. We had him on the show not too long ago. And they were like the teachers, like the name teachers to teach us stuff about comics and whatever. Because since I was a kid, I always wanted to be in comics. Always wanted to draw comics. And much like you, when you took that class, I'm like, nope. I realized that I couldn't draw the comics, but I could write the comics because the writers are the ones that control the story, not the artist, which when you're a kid, you think the artist is the one that does all the work. Right. So I met my friend Hassan Godwin there, and we became good friends. And then through a unique set of circumstances, I always wanted to get my own comic book published. And I found out that at the time, once again, this is in the 90s, all you needed was $2,000 to make your own comic book. That was, they said, you need $2,000, you make your own comic book, self-published, whatever. I was like, that didn't seem that expensive. Of course, you know, it's very different now.
Yeah.
But I was driving one day in a car from the cemetery, as a matter of fact, on New Year's. And I heard on the radio.
Were you burying someone?
No, I was just visiting someone.
Oh, okay.
And if I was burying someone, I couldn't say.
Right. Well, true. Statute of limitations never goes out on that. So gotta be careful.
So I heard, hey, you know, if you have a passion about a certain project and want to talk to people in the industry, call us and you can get your own radio show. And I thought this might be a great way to get my comic book published, is to do a comic book radio show. Right. So I always wanted to get my own book published, and it actually, to an extent, worked because I actually managed to get 2 comics published. There was one called, which is only got 1 issue got ever published, and that came out. Only 25 issues ever got made, and that was in 2008.
Right.
And I only have 1 left. And the story has never been fully told. It's a fully penciled and written story. And Apex Comics Group from Mariano Necizia's company, they're actually looking to get it published. So he's kind of pushing for that as we speak. That's called Designated. It has, remember, I wrote this 100 years ago. So I wrote it in like late 90s, early 2000s.
Right.
So it is weird that it's set in the 90s because it has a lot of 90s stuff. So I have to now say it's set in the 90s. It's about a bunch of multi-ethnic teens, which wasn't a thing back then, but now it's a thing. So I can use that. Like, oh, it's multi-ethnic. Look at this. Who are stuck in between a war of 2 alien races that are fighting over some power source, and the gems give the people powers. That's the elevator pitch.
Gotcha.
Like I said, it's full story, beginning, middle, end. It's told in a linear fashion, but it does have lots of flashbacks, and it's very low key because at the time in the 90s, everything was over the top with superpowers. Everything was going crazy. So I thought I'll go the opposite way and have very low key powers. So their powers isn't what it's about. It's just them in this situation, and they happen to have powers. That happens over a course of a day, really, in the comic. And then I also have my mascot for It Came From Radio, which is Sunburst, and she is a fire-based superhero who's from an alternate universe in the future. And that got published with Mariano's other comic book company, which was good thing I have my book here. It was RZG Comics, which was based off of Dave Ryan's War of the Independents, which he's still working on, and I give him credit for that. He's gonna finish that one day, and it's gonna be awesome. Because have you had Dave on your show?
No, not yet. No.
Okay, so the short version is that he decided to support indie comic creators, and he went around and he got all the indie comic book creators that he knew at the time and put them together to have a big massive fight.
Right.
That was the thing. And he made a couple of issues, and my character, since I knew Dave, he's like, I'll put your character in my comic. I was like, that's awesome. And it's in there. In issue 1, she's in there. And then Mariano Nacesia made a trading card set of all the characters. And my character is in there, so that's where she comes from. And then he did a comic book crossover with my character, Sunburst, and his character, Phaser. And that is Sunburst Phaser crossover issue number 2. And that, I think you can still buy that online. I think it's still available somewhere. But those are my 2 comics that I have done.
Cool. Now, the first one that you said that they're looking to publish soon.
Yes.
Now, is that a limited series or is it just a one-shot?
5-issue limited series. So it depends on, as you know, how publishing works. You can either do it 1 issue at a time, or a trade paperback, or a graphic novel. The format has always changed as the years have gone by, as the comic industry has changed. Right. So originally it was going to be a 5-issue miniseries. So I wrote it as 5 different parts. But then everything became about the trade paperbacks. And I'm like, oh, I can make this into it moves seamlessly. It could be a graphic novel, and then it's kind of doubled back on itself. And now people care about more individual issues. So who knows what the end result is? I just wanted to get published.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. Now, your process of writing, how do you work it out? Like, are you, we have these terms, pantser or plotter. Right, so you're the guy who sits down with a little string and you got like a little map. You go and you got all these post-it notes, right? Or do you just sit down and attack the keyboard?
So for the 2 books, it was actually 2 different processes. For my book, I had an idea of what to do and what I wanted to do, and then I just wrote it as I went along. And as I was writing it, and like I said, I was going back and forth with flashbacks, so I was able to fill in stories. And a lot of things that I had planned in the book, it didn't make it because it didn't flow. Okay. But I did manage to hit certain key elements, like, okay, I need them to have powers. I need the bad guy to do this. So I had like just bare minimum things I had to reach. So I was writing towards those goals. And when I hit that goal, I was writing towards the next goal. But they kind of organically filled out as they went along. So the character is like, okay, well, she wouldn't do this, despite that I need her to do this. She wouldn't do this, so it's not going to happen. That's how that came into play. And then the other thing was, it has to be 22 pages. So I was like, it has to end on this note. So those are the only guidelines I had for that. Right. The Phaser Sunburst, that was a collaboration between Mariano and myself. So we had a meeting, and we were like, okay, what do we want this book crossover to be? We had this really great story, in my opinion. It was very politically charged, and it was in depth, and it was amazing. I was like, wow, this is really good. And so we're like, all right, so Mariano's going to write some, and then I'm going to write some, and then we'll write each other's dialogue. That was pretty much the plan. So that didn't happen. Okay. I wrote my treatment of the story. I gave it to Mariano. He's like, this sounds great. He just changed a couple of dialogue, and then he sent it off to the to the penciler, and it came out. So it was nothing like I had planned it to be.
Okay. Now, do you consider that because the artist maybe wasn't interpreting your script correctly, or were there the editorial changes made?
I believe it was. I didn't get as in depth as I wanted to on the story. So, like I said, I just wrote my bare minimum part. I wrote, this is the arc of the story. But I thought that Mariano was going to give me some to work with, and we were going to go back and forth. But he was happy with what was there, and he was like, great. And then we just went to the print. I was like, wait a minute, it's not done yet.
Gotcha. Oh, so you went straight Marvel style. You just gave the artist, well, look, here's an idea of what we need done. Just, and then we'll come in and write the dialogue. We'll fill in the balloons later.
So it was a hybrid. I was actually a hybrid of that. Like, every dialogue that my character said was said in there. And it was the barest of bare minimal of the concept ideas that happened. But it was my very first major published book, so I was just proud that it got published, and I was happy with it because it exists.
Right. No, I got you, man. So I mean, what's it looking like for the next book? Like, what are you guys looking at? Like, as far as it being published, what's the holdup? Like, what is the thing that's holding it up?
Oh, the common answer is money, but it needs to be inked. And Peter Palmiotti, I'm sure you know him, famous inker in his own right. He's working on the pages right now, but then he has his own project, so he's doing his own project, and then when he finishes that, he's gonna get to my pages. So like right now, I believe it's one fully penciled and inked book, the first issue, because I actually got published, and I think he's working on the second issue now. So it's just a matter of finally getting it inked and then the money to get it published.
Gotcha. Now, have you heard of this thing? There's this newfangled thing called Kickstarter. Maybe Indiegogo.
I have, but it's not my publishing company. So it's all up to Mariano's company. And he's been promoting his, tons of books. Matter of fact, we had a panel in San Diego to promote it. So he's working on that. So it's all on him. So kind of it's out of my hands. Okay. So like, all right, go, man. You get that done. Just let me know when it's out.
Gotcha.
Because I already did my part.
That's cool. I'm like, I do it all myself. So I'm like,
It's hard when it's not all yourself. Like, you have to put faith in the other people to do what they're supposed to do.
Right.
I mean, just like with the movie, I'm sure, like, you can't be everywhere. You can't do everything, and you want to, but you just can't. Yeah. And that sometimes you just have to let it go and let them do what they're gonna do.
Exactly. I mean, it was rough. But you got to do what you got to do. So that's cool. So I mean, so how many? You have all 5 issues already penciled?
Yeah, all 5 issues are penciled. Pete has all the pencils except for one page, which somehow got lost in translation. Which is funny because he had already inked that page, so he only has a Xerox of that page inked, maybe, and it was like his favorite piece. So he's like, "I love this," and I know he gave it back to me. And then I moved, again, and it was just gone, and we have no idea where that page is.
It sucks. I mean, hopefully it's a good copy. You can scan it up. And
yeah. I mean, we because back then there wasn't like the digital files that we have today, and one of the big items was the 8-in-11 scanner.
Oh yeah.
So I had one of those, that big monstrosity you can kill somebody with. I had one. I was able to just scan the entire thing. So the scans were really good, and I scanned every page. Okay. But Pete likes to work on originals. But then every time we made an original, I made a Xerox, a scan of the inked version. So I know I have that scan. But like I said, the original is just gone to the 4 corners of the earth.
Gotcha. Well, whoever has it, hopefully they're enjoying it.
Yes.
Right. Hopefully they framed it, put it up on the wall.
That'd be awesome.
So I mean, all right. Well, that's cool. Now you looking to do? You guys looking to get this colored eventually, or are you going to do it straight black and white?
That once again, that's on Mariano's end. But in my mind, originally, because once again, I had a plan for a color cover and black and white interiors because it was cheaper. That was how you got the $2,000. But when I wrote it and I realized this, I don't think in color. So when I'm writing things, I don't think of certain color. I don't really think of colors. So in my mind, it's always been black and white. Right. But I think Mariano really wants to get it colored because now the coloring is so much easier to do and so much cheaper to do. So I think that's on his end. But once again, that's up to him.
Gotcha.
It hurts. It hurts saying that.
No, I got you, man. I got you. And it. Well, I don't know who he's getting to color it, but it's not always so cheap. But yeah, I got you. So, it came from the radio. So let's go back onto your radio. So now you guys are so you have a station out on Long Island, right?
Okay, so the actual station is in Westchester County, but the studio that we record in is out in Long Island.
Oh, okay.
So because, like I was saying with technology, I'm able to record the show in the studio, get it on a file, and I just email the file to the radio station. And he's like, great, and he plays it.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. So now, has the broadcast been suspended, or have you guys been doing it from your homes?
So we don't use the studio to record, and we used to do like
Mhm.
Facebook Lives, behind the scenes stuff. But
Right.
since it's released, when I usually put it together and it's released on Monday, I'll email it to the radio stations on
Mhm.
Monday, and then they will play it, syndicated on both places. So we don't do it live anymore. Although we record it live, it's live on tape, so we record whatever happens.
Right.
But it's recorded and then it's sent out.
Mhm. Okay. That's cool. Now, yeah, it's just an interesting process. I mean, because like I said, I'm doing this obviously over YouTube. You understand? And I'm just wondering, like, what's the is there a big difference?
I personally, being in the studio is a huge difference. Just an interaction with your co-host, and at least at the studio we had sound effects, and we had and the interaction is always better than it is in any other way. Like when we first started, I always preferred the guests to come to the studio, unless it was for some reason you could not make it. You always had to come in. It's very rare we had a phone interview. And as a matter of fact, it was funny. I actually turned down an interview with Chris Carter. That's the guy who created the X-Files.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to do a pre-recorded interview. And I was like, no, you have to call in at the time where a radio show would be live. And we actually had a day set aside for him. And I had guests coming down to the studio because we did it every week.
Right.
But Chris Claremont, I was talking to his people, and apparently he was going to be on a plane or something at the time. So he's like, can you do it on a different day? I'm like, no, this is your day. It's a live show. He's like, can you do pre-recorded? I was like, no, we can't. At the time, we couldn't do a pre-recorded thing. Later on, we could at the studio, but the GBV was a very old school, bare bones radio station. So at the time, we couldn't even do that. So I was like, sorry, I can't. Sorry, Chris Claremont, I can't. And then this was just before the second X-Files movie came out, and that bombed. So I was like, ha! Good thing you weren't on my show, because that's what you get. Your movie bombed.
That's just mean. It's just mean. But yeah, the movie was pretty terrible. It really was. Yeah. And he, I don't know. I mean, X-Files is like one of those love-hate things. There's some stuff you love, and then there's some stuff in there you're just like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of screwed the pooch on that one. So yeah, no, I got you. So now, when it comes down to interviewing different people, right? Like, everybody does it a little differently. Now, what was the strangest thing you ever had someone tell you in an interview? You don't have to tell me the person. I don't need to know that.
Strangest thing?
Right.
There really wasn't anything strange that the people have said. I believe I would put this under one of the worst interviews we've had. That's a different category.
Right.
But I guess that qualifies as strange because this was, once again, one of the older shows. I don't even think it's available online. I probably have it somewhere, but I haven't posted it beyond when it originally came out. So what I used to do back in the day when I looked for people to interview for the show, I used to go to conventions and I used to talk to people, talk to all indie creators, and I used to have a conversation. And as I was talking to them, learning about what their project is, I was like, oh, this guy seems interesting. He has a lot of stuff to say. Maybe he can come on my show. So I met this guy. He was great with talking to him, had a great conversation. And then I had a phone conversation with him a couple of weeks later. It was great. He had tons of stories to tell. But then when he was on the show, he actually called in. He gave one-word answers. It seems like he was high on drugs. And it was like pulling teeth, and I was like, "Oh my god, it was so bad." And that was the strangest thing. Like, he was just saying things. Like, he was like, "Yeah, that happened." I was like, "What are you talking about?" But I still couldn't say that on the air. And remember, we were live, so you can't.
Right.
There's nothing you can do. This is what it is. But I haven't had anybody say something so far out of the park. It's like, oh, it's more like people say surprising things, like, "Oh, I didn't know that," or just like you said, when you were in the film school. "Oh, how about that? That's interesting." So I use that to continue the conversation.
Right. Yeah. No, of course. That's funny though. Yeah, but I've had a couple of interviews like that where sometimes the guys, you just start talking to them and they just like give you one, just one word, two words. You're like, okay, I wanted a little bit more.
Yeah.
Alan Moore, you are not. I don't know if you heard this story, but there's an interview out there with Alan Moore on online. This guy, he managed to get him on his show, and it was like a small podcast or whatever. And he said it was great. He said he would ask Alan one question, and Alan would talk for 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm. I've had that happen.
Yeah, and then he would ask him another question. He would talk for 30 minutes, and then the interview was over.
Yeah, that happens a lot. That has happened quite a number of times for me. Like I go, "How are you doing?" I get a 20-minute answer. I'm like,
Right.
"All right, well, we're almost out of time now."
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I envy those people sometimes. I mean, you got to just catch me at the right moment, I guess. Because there are days, you ask me a question, I'm like, yeah, blah blah blah. Okay, what else? Yeah. I would categorize myself as a terrible interviewer most of the time, but I do like interviewing other people, so I think that's the funny thing. So what was the last convention you went to?
C2E2, just before the pandemic hit.
Mm-hmm.
It was in March, the end of March. Actually, the last weekend in March. And it was my
Right.
first time ever going to C2E2,
Right.
and that was really cool. I met a lot of
Mhm.
people there. It was really amazing, and I went with an artist, Brian Kong, a great artist,
Mhm. I
and
know that guy.
yeah, and he was telling me, he was like, because the pandemic was just getting started, he's like, man, I've never seen so many guys wash their hands so much in the bathroom before.
Right.
I'm like, oh, that's serious. Everybody had hand sanitizer. It was a great experience. Let's see, what did I do over there? I just actually walked around and I met some really interesting people. A lot of pictures I took on our Facebook page. Really some really cool stuff that I had never seen before. So that's what made it really cool. And usually I don't plan on doing interviews when I go to conventions unless they're planned ahead of time, because I just like to talk and just get a feel, and I have so much work to do on its own. And I'll just have them come to the studio.
Gotcha. Did you get to walk around Chicago?
Yeah, I walked around. I didn't have a table. I was just there as a traveling buddy for Brian. So I actually got to take a lot of pictures of tables and things and meet my friends and see stuff I never thought I would see. But it's weird how conventions are nowadays. Like, we were getting to a point before the pandemic that there was a lot of just too many conventions happening. So like at a point, like you've seen one, you've seen them all. There's not much. There's no, oh wow, look at this. I mean, there's a couple of cool things, but overall, it's like I was just impressed by Chicago in and of itself, and it being a different venue and a different place to get a hang of it. But it was just another really good convention.
Yeah, it's a beautiful city. I've only been there once, but it's a beautiful city. So, man, if I get a chance, I'll do it again. I went for Chicago Wizard World.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, that was a while ago. But yeah, actually, I think at the time it might have still been Chicago Comic-Con before Wizard took over.
Wow. So, that's just think about that. So 13 years ago, Wizard was huge.
Right.
And how the landscape has changed. Look at New York Comic-Con. They didn't exist back then.
Right.
Oh, so here's a tangent for you. As you may or may not know, as my little indicator says, and we've talked, we are the official radio show of the Big Apple Con, which is in Manhattan by Mike Carbonaro. We were a half an inch away from becoming the official show of New York Comic Con.
Okay. What happened?
So we would talk. I was talking to Lance. He's been on the show. Lance Frenchman, the head of New York Comic Con. He's been on the show back in the day when nobody cared about comics. And he has some very interesting stories to tell about the struggles he was going through to try and get the convention off the ground. And actually, he saw me a couple of times, and he actually saw me in San Diego. He's like, "Hey, Mark." I was like, "Holy crap, he remembers me!" Like, it was so awesome. So we were emailing back and forth, and I was like, it was just some random thoughts, like, "Hey, what do you think about us being the official show of your convention? We'll promote it. We have a radio show. We'll have guests on." He's like, "That sounds like a really cool idea. I really like it. Let me talk to it with my peoples and see what they say." And I was like, wow, this is, he's actually entertaining the idea. It wasn't like, well, he actually was positive and he said he would get back to me. And then a couple of I think it was like a month or so later, he messaged Maniac. He's like, okay, so the problem is, if we make you the official show of New York Comic Con, all these other media outlets are gonna get upset. So we don't want to play favorites. So unfortunately, we can't do it. And I was like, ah. And as you see, they do not have an official New York Comic Con show. So I was like, well, he wasn't lying. So it actually made me feel good. Like, it was a great idea. We were that close, but it didn't happen. That also, speaking of comics, once again, this is me being a tangent person. I was once again this close, holding it, my fingers right next to each other, of working for Marvel, doing a comic with Brian Kong and Peter Palmiotti. We were gonna do a continuation of the Secret Wars What If second series, the last issue, I believe it was 25, where it was what if the Marvel superheroes had stayed on the secret world, beyond the world, and it had them with their kids. So we had a concept, we had a couple of pages done, and I wrote the whole story about how they carry on and they come back to Earth. That was at the end of the issue. They came back to Earth, and it was overrun by Sentinels. So then it was a whole alternate universe, and so I was able to use the characters and play them with however I wanted, which was great. And I had established characters. So I wrote the entire 22 pages. They did I think it was 5 pages of actual pitch, of pencils and inks. So that way the editor can see it. And since Peter Palmiotti was working for Marvel at the time, he's like, I know an editor. If you have a project, let's see if we can get it together. And at the time, Marvel was hiring groups of people to do projects. They weren't like looking for just individuals. So he's like, since it's the 3 of us, we're all set. We have a better chance of going in. So he went in. He talked to the editor. The editor was like, well, it's a good idea. We like it. But at this time, they were starting to plan something big for Secret Wars. And they were going to use those characters. So he's like, what else do you got? And I had nothing. So lesson learned is always have a backup plan or story. So I didn't have anything, so I didn't get the job. So there you go.
Right, gotcha. All right, well, life happens. I mean, listen, my old editor is currently the EIC over there.
Oh, CB, what's his name?
Sobolski.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So get yourself a job at Marvel now.
It's funny.
Get your tall tales over there as a independent line. Start another, what was it, Epic line? What was the independent line? Epic, right? Yeah, so start your own Epic line. You get to be in head. Bring me in, and we'll be a happy group.
Right. Well, it's funny. It's because I've over the years I've seen CB. We would fly out to San Diego. We'd be on the same plane. We would do the same layovers. Like in Texas or whatever. We've done that a few times. The last time I saw him was in Boston Comic-Con, probably about a year before he became the EIC. So it was probably about 3-4 years ago.
Wow.
And, we've always been friendly. I've done him a couple favors, and I'm sure if I would have been like, hey man, get me in, you know what I mean? I probably could have.
But you want to do your own thing. You want to make it on your own.
Yeah, I don't have any interest, man. I'm like, I don't want to write Spider-Man. It doesn't mean anything to me. It's just like, whatever, man. It's just like, if I wanted to do it, I'm sure I could. But it's just like, why?
And if you think about it, the company, the industry has changed so much that a lot of people would, they're not stupid. They would take Marvel money if they had to, but they want to do their own thing because the mainstream audience has gotten to a point where A, the big comic book fans of today don't read comics, and B, the main characters are so far off the beaten path. They have to keep on reinventing themselves, and you know what? Sometimes you just got to let it go, and they don't.
Yep. Yeah. Hey man, those guys are doing their thing. They got a few good books. Donnie Cates is killing it. I hear on Thor and a couple other things. Jason Aaron's always been solid. So
But overall, I would think that the quality of the big two is not what it once was.
No. Listen, I go by Sturgeon's law. 95% of everything is crap. So Theodore Sturgeon, he knew what he was talking about. So it's just like it's one of those things. It's just, you know, it just is what it is. Myself as an independent publisher, I feel that it's my job to get into that 5%.
Right.
You understand? I mean, but when you have a line that's 100 books deep, you're creating product.
Yeah.
You're creating product. You're not creating art. You're creating product. So it's like, they got to do what they got to do. They got to crank it. It's a machine.
It's a business. That's
Yeah.
that's always the fine line between business and creativity. It's
Exactly. It's what is it? Art and commerce. It's a funny little thing we got going on in comics. But
yeah.
it works when it works, and it doesn't when it doesn't. So check it out, Mark. We've been doing this for a little bit. We're coming close to the end, but before we get there, I got a few nice, weird questions. But before I ask you any of these questions coming up, where can people find you and your work?
So the easiest way, as one of my co-hosts always says, just Google "It Came from the Radio" and it will pop up. Any podcast place you have. I just a laundry list of them: iTunes, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Spotify. We just got picked up by something called GeoSwan. I don't even know what that is, but it's there. Just type in any podcast thing you have. Type it in Came from Radio, it'll pop up. If you just type it in Came from Radio, whatever, we usually are one of the top 2 searches. We have a Patreon page. It Came from Radio. It Came from Radio.com. Anything, YouTube, Facebook, everything. It Came from the Radio. That's the easiest way.
Gotcha. All right, cool. Now, my second question is there anything you wanted me to ask you that I didn't ask you, or was there anything you wanted to discuss beyond what I asked?
No, I think we covered. I think we covered my highs and lows of the bare bones.
Okay.
We talked comics. We talked. Yeah, that's. I think we hit all the highs and lows. Yeah, we're good.
All right. Cool. Now, so on to my goofy questions.
All right,
Mark. So you're doing your book, right? Let's choose Sunburst. So let's say you're doing a new book for Sunburst, right?
Yeah.
If you had the choice of any artist, living or dead, that you could get, don't worry about budget, to do a cover for you, who would you get?
Ed Benes.
Okay.
Al Rio.
Mm-hmm.
Al Rio died, so he was one of my favorites. Him, Ed Benes, would be those are my guys. Like, and I embarrassed myself in front of some stranger at the last New York Comic Con because I went to Ed Benes's table, thinking that the guy there was Ed Benes. And I was like, dude, I love your stuff, and blah blah. He's like, I'm just sitting here. Like, great, awesome.
So I'm just some dude.
Yeah. So Ed Benes, I love his stuff, or Gary Frank. Those are my top.
Yeah, Gary Frank's. I mean, woof, that stuff he did. Yeah, that stuff he did recently at DC. What was the thing he did with Jeff Johns? It was the Watchmen thing.
Oh yes. Was it the girl one? No.
No. He did the. It was Jeff Johns doing like after the Watchmen where he has.
Yeah, I know one was Adam Hughes and one that he did. I thought he did the girl one, unless that was Adam Hughes did the girl one.
No. There was a 12-part limited series.
Oh, Doomsday Clock.
Doomsday Clock, right? I mean, Gary Frank. I mean, his stuff was incredible in that.
I thought you were talking about the After Watchmen miniseries that they all did that was focusing on the characters. I thought that's what you were talking about. But yeah, Gary Frank.
Yeah, his stuff was incredible. I was like, whoa. I mean, like, I was just like, yeah, this is next level stuff. So now, Mark, if you got the golden ticket and they called you up to the big companies, doesn't necessarily have to be Marvel or DC. It could be any of these companies, with Dark Horse, whomever. And they said, Mark, pick any character, any group. Who would you write?
I would love to go and revisit those characters that I made for that comic. I really and I haven't seen them since. So I was like, those are still untapped potential, the characters I could deal with in my own little world. I would love that. But excluding that, because I've already started writing it, and when you write characters, you get a relationship with them. So even if they didn't exist, that's like I feel a connection to those guys.
Right.
I would love to do Hulk. He's my favorite character of all time. I can't do as good as Peter David did, but I would like to get to that area. That's pretty much. I would love to do a Hulk a story.
Okay.
That would be my big thing.
How are you feeling about Al Ewing these days?
I did not like what they did to the Hulk at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm
You
gonna
don't like
stop
the
reading that. I don't like the Red Hulk. I don't like the Ghost Hulk. I don't like the Immortal Hulk. I don't like any of that stuff.
so you don't like the body horror
No,
Hulk? You know,
no,
we chop him up.
no, not at all. I was with it when Byrne was on it in the late '80s, early '90s. That I picked up with Peter David, and I thought that was the best Hulk stuff I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
And then he left, and I stayed on it for a little longer with what was it, J.G. Jones, I think it was.
I don't remember. After Peter, I don't even know.
So I just didn't care for it. And then I just stopped collecting Hulk entirely. And then I was keeping my tabs on it because then I was collecting, Heroes for Hire.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard that there's a Red Hulk now. I was like, what? And then there's a Red She-Hulk. I was like, what? And then they're doing all this stuff. I'm like, oh, jeez. I tapped out. I'm like, that's it. I give up.
Well, I liked Greg Pak's run with World War
Hulk.
Yeah.
And that was okay.
I enjoyed that.
That was probably the last thing. Like I stopped when they were doing the when Amadeus Cho was getting involved. I believe around that area was when I tapped out.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. Fair enough. All right. So now I got some comparatives for you. All right. So all right. So buckle up. We'll start off nice and easy. All right.
All right.
Godzilla or Gamera?
Godzilla, 100%.
Okay.
Well, which Godzilla?
That's up to you.
Oh, okay. So then, yes.
All right. Captain America or Batman?
Captain America.
Okay. Fair enough. Stan Lee or Jack Kirby?
Ooh, that's a tough one. And so this is my answer to that. There was an article that was talking about Marvel and the creation of Marvel, and they said that Jack Kirby created Marvel Comics with a small M. Stan Lee created Marvel Comics with a big M. If it wasn't for Stan's showmanship and interaction with the fans, the other stuff would have never been there. So I can't separate the two. Like together, it's like a Reese's peanut butter cup. They're inseparable. You need both of them.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Byrne or Perez?
Oh, John. Well, early John Byrne, later George Perez.
All right.
Do you want to hear my John Byrne story? Do we have time for that?
Go ahead. Hit me up with it because I'll hit you up with mine. Go ahead.
Okay. So when I was in the comic book school, they had guest people come in, and one guy was coming in, and he was doing the She-Hulk at the time, and John Byrne was just off the book. So he was in Marvel, so he was telling me all the stories. And then I ran into Jay Lee when he was doing Namor. So John Byrne was doing Namor, and then he just started doing the script for Namor. And so I talked to Jay Lee, and I was like, hey, Jay, how is it working with John Byrne? And he's like, dude, John Byrne says the book starts here, and the book ends there. Go. I was like, well, that explains a lot. Like, if you read the Jay Lee, John Byrne issues, it's a lot of splash, not too much substance. Now you know why.
Gotcha. Okay.
So what's yours?
My John Byrne story is a little different. All right. So, and I've told this story a couple of times, so I'm going to tell it one more time. I like this story. It's very positive. So we, this was years ago, mid-90s sometime. Myself, group of friends, drove down to Pittsburgh Comic-Con, and John Byrne was there signing. We didn't know he was going to be there. Okay, we had no idea.
Right.
Set up our table, all this stuff. One of my artists, huge fan of his, picks up a couple copies of the books, and the guy who drove us there said, also a huge John Byrne fan. They go over to John Byrne, and the artist, he presents John with his latest issue, and he says, Mr. Byrne, I brought this over for you. This is a comic I illustrated, I brought it over for you. I'm a huge fan. He said Byrne took his time, flipped through it, really enjoyed it, complimented him, whatever. Asked him to sign it. He signed it for him. John Byrne takes the comic, and then he turns to them and he says, guys, you don't have anything for me to sign. They said, look, we just drove in from New York. We didn't even know you were going to be here, blah, blah, blah. He said, oh, don't worry about it. So he reaches underneath his table, pulls out a case of books. He says, the dealer just gave me these. and it was the first issue of his run on Fantastic Four.
Wow.
Okay, so he pulls out 2 copies, signs it for them, gives it to them.
Wow.
I have never seen 2 full-grown men come back to the table floating. These 2 guys were floating on air. They were like, "Oh, we just, we're touched by the hand of Byrne." so yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. So yeah, because I sometimes hear a lot of negative stories about John, and I have to share that one as much as possible because I'm like, look, guys, he's not always a bad guy.
There's people who just are regular people. Sometimes they have bad days. Sometimes it's you have to just know them to get to love them.
Exactly.
But that's, I mean, how much time do we have? Like, how long are we gonna go?
Oh, we can go as long as you want.
Okay, so the reason, since you brought it up, I'm gonna go on one of my tangents. Lou Ferrigno.
Okay. The Incredible
Everybody
Hulk.
knows Lou Ferrigno is the Incredible Hulk. Well, back in the day, he played the TV Hulk, as he's known now.
Right.
And yes. So I was a huge Incredible Hulk fan growing up as a kid. And I started going to conventions, and there was a convention in Madison Square Garden where Adam West was going to be there and Lou Ferrigno. And I am also a huge Adam West fan. And this was probably my first time going to convention with like real-time celebrities. So I didn't know how it worked. So nowadays, it's very, very different. But back then, it was just lines.
Right.
So I go in, I see Adam West, I see Lou Ferrigno, and I happen to have my book that Adam West wrote, his biography. So I wanted to get that signed. My plan was to get that signed. Lou Ferrigno was there, and I didn't have anything for Lou Ferrigno to sign, but he was there. And I see that Adam West has this giant line, huge line. This is before Family Guy, so this is way after. I see he has a huge line, and I see Lou Ferrigno has no line. So I was like, I'll go to Lou Ferrigno first, then I'll go over to Adam West. So I go to Lou Ferrigno, and I was nervous, going up to one of my major celebrity people running into. And I go up, and he goes, "Oh, hi, Lou Ferrigno. I have a deal. If you buy 2 pictures or whatever, you get a discount." And when he said the price, I think it was like $40. And I was like, $40? I only had $40 because I'm a kid. And I'm like, well, he's $40. I wonder how much Adam West is going to be. And I really want this book signed. So I'm going to wait and go to Adam West first and see how much money I have left over to come back to Lou Ferrigno. But I probably can't, because if he's 40, I only have 40. Like, what am I going to do? So as I'm looking, some other people come up to his line, and Lou Ferrigno changes his attention from me to the new people. So I politely excuse myself, and I walk back. And my friends, they're all jerks. They're all waiting, far away, like, "Oh, what happened?" Like, "Thanks for coming with me." And I explained to them what happened. And one of them, he was like, "Oh, I wonder if he'll take a picture, and I'll sell it on eBay." That was when eBay was just starting out. So he's like, "Oh, I'll sell it on eBay. This might be a cool thing."
Right.
But he didn't want to go back up by himself. So I was like, fine. So I went back up with him, and he handed me the camera to take a picture of Lou Ferrigno with him. And for those of you who do not know, Lou Ferrigno is partially deaf in one ear. And his wife, I believe it was his wife who was with them at the time. So anytime somebody said something, they whispered to Lou in case he couldn't hear him over the table. Gotcha. So we go back up. I'm with my friend. I have the camera in my hand. And Lou Ferrigno says the same thing. "Hi, I'm Lou Ferrigno." Like, he doesn't even remember who I am. There's only like 10 minutes difference. I was like, whatever. And he says the same thing. And my friend's like, "Yeah, I'll do that. But can I also take a picture with you?" And Lou was like, and the lady went, and he's like, "Great, I'll take a picture with you." So I was like, "Great, awesome." So my friend, so I have the camera. So I step back a good 3 or 4 feet to get a great shot. This is a old school camera. It's not with a cell phone. It's a great shot of Lou and my friend in this shot. And Lou is talking, I guess he's talking to my friend, or he's talking to whoever. And I gesture with my camera that I'm going to take the picture for Lou to see that, hey, I'm going to take the picture, because I don't think he heard that I was going to take the picture. Right. And then Lou Ferrigno, as loud as he possibly could, yells, "Not him. He didn't buy anything. He can't be in the picture." That's awesome, isn't it? So
So is it? So you were taking the picture,
Right. And
but
because
you
I
said
didn't buy anything, I couldn't be in the picture.
right, but you were just taking the picture. You were
Right. So he misunderstood the situation, but still he felt
mm,
it necessary to say that I couldn't be in the picture because
right.
I didn't buy anything. So that was
Oh,
my Lou Ferrigno story, and I've told this story many times. And I always thought that he was just a jerk in general. And I
mm,
told this to
mm,
many of my friends, and I was telling it to one of my other friends, comic book guy,
right.
and it turns out that no, he's always like that.
Oh,
So my other friend, he was like, "Yeah, I had my own story, and I only thought it was just me. But since you told me your story, yeah, this is how he is." And every single person who I've talked to always
mm,
has a very bad and negative Lou Ferrigno story. And once again, in his defense, he is,
mm,
at the time, a celebrity, and they make their money on the celebrity photographs and blah. Because if you're not acting, you're not that, whatever. But he had to be a jerk about it. That's all I'm just saying.
right, right. No, I got you. I got you. I mean, you know what it is. I'm not interested in meeting celebrities at all. I have no interest in it. Like my celebrities tend to be comic book people. Like you tell me Walter Simonson's at the show, I'd be like, okay, maybe
Right.
that guy.
He was,
you know,
he was a very nice guy.
oh yeah, Walter Simonson's a sweetheart.
We did an interview with him. So cool.
Him, Arthur Adams, and a small hand like maybe if Gary Gianni was around,
Yeah.
those types of guys. I'll seek them out to try to get an autograph or whatever. But like celebrities, I just have no interest. It's never like you know, especially like someone like Bill Shatner. No, well because it's a double whammy. One, it's like hundreds of bucks to get a signature,
Now it is.
and two, as an independent creator, whenever I hear Bill Shatner's at a show, Bill Shatner, God bless him. I know he's a nice guy, and I wish him nothing but the best. But he is a show killer for independent publishers. I don't care what you tell me. Every show I've ever gone to where he's at, I've done bad.
Yeah, you have to think about it. Like Shatner is probably one of the last few guys of that time.
Mm-hmm.
So he's pretty. It's like he's on that list of like big time. He's transcended all through all the generations. Like no matter how old you are, you know something that he's in. Boston Legal, he's a Priceline guy. Like it's something.
Yeah.
That's how universal he is. So he just pulls everybody to him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm like, I understand that. And he was an interesting interview. He was the only person that we interviewed that we had to have the questions pre-approved.
Okay.
And because it was Shatner, I was like, all right, well, I'll have the questions pre-approved. And it hurt so much because he had such interesting things to say. And I wanted to do follow-up and do this, but we only had a certain amount of time with him.
Right.
And we had to answer those specific questions. And I was like, man, I felt like there was so much more we could have done. But he was gracious enough to do it. It was a great interview, and he was sharp. And if you ever seen him at a panel, he's on. He knows how to control a room. He can really handle himself well. And it's damn entertaining if you're a fan of any of his work.
No, like I said, God bless him. I'm not, there's only but so much shade I could throw at him, because I've enjoyed his work over the years. He's a great actor, but I'm sorry, I don't want to be at a show with him. Anyway, so let's get back to some of these questions.
Yes.
Frank Miller or Alan Moore?
I liked The Dark Knight Returns, but I didn't like the other one that he did.
Okay.
The sequel one that he did, I didn't care for that. Alan Moore as a person, I find him very interesting. Like when I see interviews or listen to interviews of him, I'm like, man, he has some really interesting stuff to say. And then Frank Miller also did RoboCop, so I'm like, oh, that was pretty good. But then he wrote RoboCop 3. I'm like, oh, that wasn't that good. So as a person, I would say Alan Moore, but as a content creator, I would go with Frank Miller.
Okay. Lord of the Rings or Star Wars?
I've never seen the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So
Really?
I've only seen the Hobbit trilogy.
Wow. You missed out on the good one.
It has its own story, and this is just Mark being Mark. This is one of my Mark traits. I was upset that they decided to make 3 movies without showing how good the first movie was. So when it was announced, because they don't nowadays, that's common to do multiple movies at the same time. But back then, if I remember correctly, only Superman 1 and 2 sort of was done in one time, and the Back to the Future 2 and 3 was done at the same time. But it was already established and proven with Back to the Future 1. So this movie, when it came out, they're like, yeah, we're going to make 3 movies. And I'm like, dude, I don't even know what the first one's going to be good. I boycott this movie. I'm not going to see it. And that's why I never saw it. And then I heard it was like, 12 hours. So now if I watch it, I'm going to have to watch all 12 hours in one shot. Because if I don't like it, I'm going to still have to watch it. So like, I gotta sit down and watch the whole thing through. And I used to work at a movie theater as a projectionist, as I mentioned.
Right.
And the Hobbit movies came out. And since chronologically it's before, I was like, I can watch this. So to prepare myself, I didn't really care for it. So I would say Star Wars with a caveat that Star Wars up until Rogue One, not including Episode 7.
Gotcha. Fair enough. Those last 2 movies are garbage. Terminator or RoboCop?
RoboCop. I love RoboCop. I mean, I never was a fan of Terminator. I'm a fan of Arnold Schwarzenegger now, and I appreciate what he's done. Like despite the fact of the train wreck that was this last movie, I found it enjoyable at least.
Right.
But I did not care for the RoboCop reboot.
Well, yeah.
And RoboCop 3 wasn't that good.
There's only one RoboCop movie. This is the first one, the Paul Verhoeven movie. That's it. You can skip all that other stuff.
But Peter Weller was in the second one, so I got to give it a little credit.
Very little. Very little. I love Frank Miller. Not in movies. I come in comics. All right. Space Ghost or Thundar the Barbarian?
Ooh. I would go with Herculoids, but if I had to pick one of the two, Space Ghost or Thundar? I have to say Thundar had a better story to it, but as a kid, I loved the action of Space Ghost, and it always bothered me because he only had 6 buttons, 3 on one wrist, 3 on the other, and he had the belt, the invisible belt. And he was always pressing the same buttons to do all these different things. Like, how does that even work?
Maybe, I don't know, maybe I had combination numbers. Let's see. I don't know how familiar you are with animation, but Don Bluth or Chuck Jones?
Don Bluth was Secret of Nymph and Dragon's Lair. Chuck Jones is Tom and Jerry, right?
Yep. Bugs Bunny, Tom and Jerry. Yeah.
Okay. I would say as animation-wise, because it was just so smooth and beautiful, you got to go with Don Bluth. But for iconic stuff, Chuck Jones.
Gotcha. All right, we've done a few of these already. We're gonna do a couple more, and then we'll wrap it up. You're old, so you might be good for this one.
I'm old.
Listen, I'm just as old. Okay. Now, there's some questions I get people in their 30s, and I can't ask them these questions. So, I have to hold these off for the older cats.
All right.
Beastmaster or Sword and the Sorcerer?
Ooh, Beastmaster, Mark Singer. Sword and the Sorcerer, that was Matt Houston, right?
Yes.
Lee, what the hell was his name? Lee Horsley.
Lee Horsley, yes.
That was one with the 3 swords that shot out, right? Yeah.
You see the sorcerer pulling the guy's heart out?
Yes. Yeah. I was a fan of Lee Horsley, but I'll have to go with Beastmaster because when they made the continuation series on the TV show, they brought back Mark Singer. So I'm a Mark Singer fan, so I have to go with Mark Singer more than a Lee Horsley fan, Matt Houston fan.
But Mark Singer, very nice man. I don't know if you've ever met him.
No, I never got a chance to meet him, and I felt bad that they brought him in for the V reboot, and then they canceled the show. I'm like, come on, man! They should have brought him back early. It could have saved the show.
No, because what's funny is, again, Pittsburgh Comic-Con, myself and Daphne, we were there and we're setting up, right?
Yeah.
And Mark Singer's across from us. And we're like, look, it's Beastmaster. Right? And he looks at us. He's like, hey, guys, how you doing? Good morning. We're freaked out. We're like, what the? Like, we're from New York. You can't be talking to us like that.
That is true.
It's like,
What do you want?
Exactly. What do you want? You know, he's like, how you doing, guys? I'm like, hey, how you doing, Mr. Beastmaster? It's like, yeah, it's just kind of funny. But actually a genuinely nice guy. Like you could tell he wasn't faking it. You know, this was who he was. I was like, okay, good for you, buddy.
One of the nicest people I ever met, celebrity-wise, who was, in my humble opinion, was the best interview I've ever done, which sadly it never aired, was Robert Culp.
Robert Culp.
He was I Spy with Bill Cosby. He was the old white guy. He was the guy on Greatest American Hero, the FBI agent, and he also played Deborah's mom on Deborah's dad on Everybody Loves Raymond. So he was the wife's father. That's Robert Culp.
Gotcha. All right, and why did it never air?
It was, once again, technical thing. So at the time, I had the interviews I was doing was on audio cassettes. So we had to transfer to digital, and I just couldn't figure out how to do it at the time. And now it's buried somewhere, so I would have to find the tape, figure out how to get it on digital, and then air it. And now he passed away. But yeah, it was a really amazing. He was so insightful and so generous. It was amazing. He was such a nice guy.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, it's unfortunate. Go find that tape. What's wrong with you?
Do you know how small audio cassette tapes are?
I'm old, yes. I do, actually.
Yeah,
I could pull some out.
To find that in the boxes of stuff that I have, plus all the other ones I did.
Well, did you label them?
No.
Ooh,
yeah, exactly.
That's the cardinal sin right there. That's the sin. Yes.
Lesson learned.
Spock or Data?
Ooh, that's a rough one. I actually like both actors, and I actually interacted with Brent Spiner at the last 2 Big Apple Cons ago. So it was like March of last year. He was a really cool guy. I never got the chance to interact with Leonard Nimoy, but I did see him on stage, and I love his Spock. So I mean, he originated the role, but as like personality wise, I love Brent Spiner. But I'll have to say Spock if we're going Spock versus Data. So Spock.
Okay, cool. We'll end the show on this because again, old guy, and you mentioned wrestling.
All right.
Hulk Hogan or Ric Flair?
Hulk Hogan all the way. Hulk Hogan is the guy.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. Although I got to be honest with you, I saw Ric Flair at a show one time, right?
Right.
And I got to say, I never seen a man be more happy to be meeting his fans than Ric Flair. Like, he was like batshit bonkers happy to see everyone. Like, I was just like, all right, this dude.
So here's
like his next level. But I was like, okay.
here's my Ric Flair story. So a friend of mine does a wrestling comic book called Headlocked. It's a really nice guy. Mike Kingston is a really great comic, and he gets a lot of celebrities who are wrestlers at his table. And Ric Flair was signing at a table, and a guy walks by, a random guy walking by Ric Flair is signing, and he goes, "Dude, I wish you were my dad." And Ric Flair says, "I might be."
That's hilarious. Excuse me.
So, yeah.
Ric Flair got around.
That's all I've heard.
He's got around. That's all that wooing. All right, Mark, this was awesome, but we made it. We made it to the end. So please do me a favor.
Yes.
Do the fans a favor. Please let everybody know one more time where they can find you and your work.
So once again, the easiest way is It Came From The Radio. Just Google that. But it's www.itcamefromradio.com. Facebook, It Came From The Radio. Instagram, which we really don't update, but Twitter I post once in a while. But Facebook is the main one of the 3 social medias. We have tons of podcast places. So if you have any type of podcast, we should be able to be on it. I just applied for the Apple Music because that's the new one, but I believe we should be on that soon. But we're on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Deezer, Stitcher, TuneIn. On our website, there are I put 2 embedded media players. That was pretty impressive for me because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So if you actually go to our website, you can actually just click on the website. You can hear the latest show and the library of other shows. YouTube page, I forgot the live shows. I forgot about the live shows. I always forget about the live shows. Once a month, thanks to the fine folks at the East Meadow Public Library. That's www.eastmeadow.info. They do tons and tons of programming. When pre-pandemic, they had tons of stuff at the library. They also have their own library con, which is probably one of the best library cons ever. And it's free, and they have like really great guests. They have tons of independent artists. They have lots of demonstrations in a working library. I love it. It's called the MCOM Anime Fest, and they sponsor our show to do a live show once a month. So we used to do it live in front of a studio audience. We recorded it and then we aired it as a regular show. But now, because of the pandemic, they let us do it online. So we do it via Zoom once a month. Our next show, we just had one last week with independent creator Patrick Riley. He does the Misadventures of Electrolyte and the Purveyors of Justice. His comic is hilarious. He has a comic book superhero who's rich, and what he does, he just pays criminals not to do their crime. I think that's the most amazing thing to do. Next month we have Francesco. He's an artist. He's a cover artist. He has done Savage She Dragon for Image Comics. He's a really great friend of mine. He's going to be on the next one, and that is going to be on October 14th. It's always usually on the second Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. So if you go to our Facebook page, there's information on that, but it's www.eastmeadow.info. You look it up. You can actually go down to the events page and sign up, and you can join us for our live show, be part of our live show. So I forgot about that. So there you go. That's the question I would have liked you to ask, but now you did. So everywhere as it came from, everywhere else, just remember it came from the radio.
All right. So there you go, folks. Go check out It Came from the Radio.
Good job.
Yeah, I know, right? It's awesome. That's why I love this stuff. And go check out my Indiegogo, the OswaldChronicles.com. Just pull out one of these. All right. There you go.
Great read.
Thank you. Fantastic art by Jay Gonzalez, David Montoya, and Liz Buenaventura. So thank you so much. And I'll be talking to all you guys soon.